Welcome back, everybody. Clearwater Jazz Holidays, Young Lions, Jazz Master Virtual Sessions. This is Steve Weinberger. I'm the CEO of the Clearwater Jazz Holiday Foundation. And I'm really happy to invite folks in today to join our good friend Pat Close for part of our Conversation With series today. The great Jimmy Haslip is with us. Jimmy, how's it going?
It's going pretty well. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us, Jimmy. We were just talking before we got started about how special these Young Lions Jazz Master virtual sessions have been. The Clearwater Jazz Holiday Foundation, in addition to producing the 42-year music festival, also supports a variety of different education and outreach programs in the community, including the Young Lions program and now these virtual sessions. I want to thank some special partners, including Blue Water Wealth Management at Steward Partners and Duke Energy, for taking a very special interest in this growing resource. After these live sessions, the recordings are put into the studio online at clearwaterjazz.com. And you can also watch or listen, I should say, to these sessions at the Young Lions Jazz Master Virtual Sessions podcast, wherever you stream your podcasts. It's available on all the major platforms. And I think we just got close to 5,000 total plays in just a short time that we've been doing this, and that's presented by our good friends at Marine Max Clearwater. So thank you for everybody who's been following along, to all the musicians that have been participating to help, and to all of the students and band directors out there that are benefiting from these. I hope you're finding really good value. We certainly appreciate you supporting these and following along. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Pat Close to lead us in this great conversation with Jimmy Haslip.
I hope it's
here we go.
Hey, thank you, Steve. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Many of you out there are. I know there's a few of you that I know personally. But thank you so much, and welcome everyone to a conversation with, I'm so excited about this one, bass guitarist Jimmy Haslip, who's been an influence to me over the years, has played on some of my recordings, actually, as well. Jimmy is, before I introduce him, I'd like to just open up by saying Jimmy's a world-renowned Grammy Award winner, bassist, composer, producer, and co-producer. He plays left-handed, upside down, 5- and 6-string electric bass and fretless basses. The first time I heard Jimmy was when he played with the Yellow Jackets, and that was from 81 through 2011. If those of you aren't familiar with that band, some of you younger players here, they were a LA-based fusion, funky fusion band, and great players in that band. And you have to check them out. But some of the other great artists that Jimmy has, to his credit, is Jeff Lorber Fusion, Alan Holdsworth, Bobby McFerrin, Bruce Hornsby, Michael Franks, Brenda Russell, Gino Vanelli, the Brother to Brother album. Wow, just found that out that was Jimmy playing bass on that. We got to talk about that, and the Black Cars album, Gino Vanelli. But Brother to Brother. Okay, so sorry, I got crazy about that one. Chris Bodie, Will Downing, Anita Baker, Diana Ross, Dave Koss, Harvey Mason, Gary Meek, Robin Ford and Ricky Lawson on their solo projects, who were with the Yellow Jackets. An album, Casino Lights, live in Switzerland, Montreux, a tune, Monmouth College Fight Song. Love that song. Shuffle, beautiful, great song. Jimmy just has a way of just sucking you into, he makes you listen to him when you listen to music. that he's playing on, as well as many movie soundtracks to his credit. Star Trek, The Jungle Book, Weird Science, How Stella Got Her Groove Back, and more. Some of his solo projects that he produced and played on as well, the Ark Project, Red Heat, which I love that album. Maybe Jimmy could tell us more about other solo projects a bit later, some of his current ones. But whether you're a bass player, drummer, guitarist, keyboardist, whatever, you really owe it to yourself to go on YouTube, Google Jimmy Haslip, if you don't already know who he is. So, right now I'd like to, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Jimmy Haslip. Jimmy, how are you? Welcome to the session.
I'm good, and that's all very kind of you to mention all that.
Sir.
And I appreciate being here.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I know this is not mainly, but mostly for, these young lions, these young musicians coming up today, who are all part of this education and outreach program. And since most of them are, can you share a little bit of your educational beginning? I know you started, I guess you told me, on trumpet. And before you even played, but like you're very young in grade school, I'm imagining, and how that got you to bass.
Well, music was always a big part of my household growing up as a little kid. My family, my mom and dad were both from Puerto Rico, so they met in New York, and of course, when they had kids, my brother and I, they exposed us to the culture, and a big part of a lot of cultures, and especially with Puerto Ricans or Cubans, music and dance, the food, there's a lot of culture there, and my mom and dad took the time to expose us to that. In fact, my first language was Spanish. I learned to speak Spanish before English as a little tiny kid. But music was a huge part of the house. I grew up listening to a lot of salsa music, Ray Barretto, Tito Puente, Tito Rodriguez, Celia Cruz, Mongo Santa Maria, and the list goes on. Plus, my brother, who was 11 years older than me, was really into jazz and classical music. So I was exposed through my brother to everything from Coltrane to Thelonious Monk, Eric Dolphy, Miles Davis, Cannonball Adderley, and then Prokofiev, Stravinsky, Mozart, Brahms, Messiaen. So I grew up with this very rounded kind of musical family, listening to everything from pop music. My mom and dad liked listening to things like Andy Williams and obviously Frank Sinatra, but then also big band music like Count Basie, Duke Ellington. I was exposed to Ella Fitzgerald. Louis Armstrong. So there's a lot of different kinds of music as a kid to grow up with. And of course, when you're a little kid, you're a sponge. So all that music just kind of went in me, created a lot of interest. And fortunately, in 1965, I guess I was in fourth grade. Actually, no, I take that back. 1957, I was in fourth grade, and a music teacher came into our class and said, "Who wants to play an instrument?" So that was back in the day when music programs.
I remember those days. I
Yeah,
remember that. In grade school, yeah, you could play.
A gift.
Yeah.
It was a gift. So I picked trumpet, and I started studying trumpet when I was 7 years old. And later, when I was 13, I was exposed to, seeing rock bands and top 40 bands or what have you. And I really liked the electric bass. So I ended up getting an electric bass when I was 13 and self-taught. And I'm naturally left-handed, which is the reason why I play the way I do. And
so you just took the bass, a right-handed bass, and just flipped it over. You didn't restring it.
No.
So I know you get asked.
Much to my dismay. Yeah, it was the fact that I was naive about the instrument. Didn't know a lot about it, but at the same time, didn't figure that electric bass was going to be my career at 13 years old. So it was just a fun thing to do. And, I just taught myself a lot of tunes. I did eventually get some instruction from a guy that I went to school with, his sister, and he had been playing tuba and string bass with Elvin Jones. So he lived in the neighborhood where I grew up, and I took some lessons from him, and he started teaching me a lot about diatonic system and a lot of the basic stuff. Are you hearing me?
Yes, I just lost you, and that's why I freaked out. Sorry, I lost you, and then I was like, "Uh-oh."
That's okay.
You're back. We're good.
Anyway, electric bass, I picked it up when I was 13, and I had all this incentive and exposure to a lot of music growing up, and that's the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing today at 69 years old. So,
and that's some great. We have the same exact background, actually. My dad playing me, all the same types of music as a trumpet player. My dad played, and basically I considered that that was my ear training. I could listen to that stuff, and he would, especially when your dad's a musician, he'd go, "Listen to this part right here."
Right.
And when your dad tells you to listen on top of it, you're like, and then you hear it. First you listen, and then you hear it, and that's very similar. It's an amazing background like that, and that's great ear training, that stuff. And then, not to mention, I know you told me you loved when I asked you to play on my single, Mr. Maceo, which was an old school funk tune. And you said, "Oh, I'd love to play on that. I mean, I just, I love funk and Motown, And so I'm sure from New York, right? You had the Motown up north. That influence on us was tremendous. So, it was just amazing that you can cross over. I mean, you got the chops to play the fusion stuff with Virgil Donati. Then you have this amazing ability, just like boom, 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 boom. Just lay down an old school groove. So, how important is that to younger players, Jimmy, to know the genres first, like they get studio work? You must know to read, and you must know these, I'm guessing, bass grooves and genres just as drummers would, correct? Or
well, of course, I think the more you know about music, about the the different aspects of music, different styles of music, different forms in music. I think that's only to your advantage as a musician wanting to work. Versatility, diversification, basically. So when I teach seminars, I always talk to students about diversifying and not, for an example, even going beyond all the different styles and forms and genres and going beyond that, diversifying as far as what you do as a musician. So not just thinking I'm only going to be a bass player, but maybe study horn arranging, or maybe study composition, maybe study recording engineering.
Good point. Yes.
Learning how to use Pro Tools and technology. So on top of knowing a lot about music, and that was always a big part of my education, even my teaching myself about things. I actually, when I was in the Yellow Jackets, at one time, I decided that I wanted to study music from around the world. So that was a 3 years or more study, which is still ongoing, to be honest. But in doing so, I became maybe not a qualified in this field, but at least knowledgeable about being learning about music from all around the world, and having a feel for ethnomusic. So I studied music from Africa, from South America, from the Middle East.
Did you go there and study it, Jimmy, or?
No, I just started buying lots of records and listening to a lot of music from all these areas, and
Gotcha.
and also being aware of artists that came out of all these areas,
Right.
And that all had to do with being around a lot of people that knew certain things and would turn you on the stuff. They'd say, "Hey, listen to this. I just heard this choir from Bulgaria, and they sing with these very unusual harmonies with minor seconds and all that." So I go out and buy that record, and I'd listen to it, and it was awesome, So I learned
even being open to it.
Well, that's it. You have to have an open mind about it all, and really look at all music as one huge study to prepare yourself in many ways to deal with any kind of situation you might come across, in a session. So in other words, if I got a call from Virgil Donati to play on something that was heavily inundated with odd meters and some crazy fusion stuff, I'm still able to understand what that is and perform it. Or if you call me and want me to play on something that's influenced by James Brown and Maceo Parker, I know what that is, so you can focus on what the music is and how to perform it. And that's, the more you know about all those kinds of things, and the larger your palette is of knowledge with all these different, as you said, grooves and certain harmony that's used in certain kinds of music.
It all surfaces.
And it all becomes part of what you're able to do. And the more you know about this, the larger your palette is, and the more prospects you'll have to work and to play with other people.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
So get all of that info, like you said, you were like a sponge.
Well, as a kid, yeah. My brain is not a sponge anymore, but I work at it, and I still listen to a lot of music, and I'm still learning things every day. And that's another, I would say, something to aspire to in life, is to try to learn something every day, something new. And
Wow.
if you do that, then after many, many years, you hopefully will have learned a lot of things.
Yes, sir. I believe so.
And that'll influence how you go about life.
Very true.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask you something about, drummers and bass players. We're connected, and man, I follow you, obviously, and I listen to everything you do, and just so happens that every drummer you play with is like one of my top favorite drummers as well. Uh-huh. And so how do you, from a bass player standpoint, can you tell us how you approach, like with different drummers, like with groove and feel with the drummer you play with, like when you have to come up with original parts, or when you're playing with someone like Will Kennedy, then Ricky Lawson, who's, rest in peace, passed away. Not the difference between, but then you're playing with Virgil Donati, and you're playing with Jimmy Brantley. Like some of these cats are groove, and some of these cats are chops, obviously, and both. But from your standpoint, when you groove with a drummer and feel, tell us. About that.
I lost you for a second, so could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Maybe you could tell some of these.
Yeah, for some reason I'm
player.
Pat, I think we're having some issues with the connection. Hey, Pat.
Give him some tips. Oh, you can't hear me?
Yeah. Pat, the connection's not too great on your end.
What happened? Yes?
The connection's not too great on your end. Can you give us maybe a testing 1, 2, 3, and we'll see if we can hear you?
Testing 1, 2, 3. I see you. I hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're back. You're sort of back now.
Yeah.
Man,
Yeah.
I don't know what to do, but I'm right by my Wi-Fi. Am I still there? You're not hearing me.
Yeah, it's a little bit spotty.
Huh. Okay. I can answer that question though.
Okay, answer that, please.
So you wanted me to talk about groove with bass and drums, and
yes.
That's a very important relationship in an ensemble. If you don't have a good connection with the bass and the drums in a group, in an ensemble, the foundation will be weak and won't support the other musicians. So very important, and I take that very seriously when I enter into a recording session or a live gig. The first thing I want to do is create a solid and grooving foundation with the drums. So I take it upon myself to really concentrate on what the drummer's doing, how he's feeling certain things. And the first place I start is the kick drum. So if I lock in with the kick drum, because for me, the electric bass is kind of like a melodic kick drum. So if I lock in with the bass drum to start, that's going to create a very serious foundation for an ensemble. And then once I have that established, then I can look into some other aspects like, melodic kind of things, maybe even polyrhythmical kind of things to enhance the groove in certain ways. But bottom line, if I can just play a very simple pattern with the kick drum, if I just only did that, that would create
True.
a solid foundation, and it would keep the ensemble grooving hard. So as long as you can do that, you're ahead of the game. And then if there's anything that you can add to it, as far as, like I said, polyrhythmic phrases or, any kind of interesting melodic content, that's all cherries on top,
Yeah.
But for me, it's always concentrate on the kick drum. So with each drummer, they have their own kick drum patterns and things that they might do. And you just got to pay attention and be in the moment and concentrate on what that is and walk into it. It's as simple as that, really. If you can do that, you're golden. And that's what I aspire to. And that's what actually has helped me play with the hundreds of drummers that I've played with, because every drummer has a different way of feeling things, a little different way of performing certain pieces. And if you just focus on that one drum and keep that solid, then you're good.
Okay. I'm sorry, we're having some technical difficulties.
That's okay. That happens.
So sorry about that. Maybe someone has a question, Steve, if you're not getting me real clear right now.
Well, I do have some thoughts, but let's try to keep going with you, Pat, and see. I can kind of hear you okay right now. If I find that it's breaking up, I'll throw myself in there.
Okay. Okay. My next question would be then, the brother to brother. Can you tell us about that? How that came to be? And because that just blew away every musician on the planet that I know.
Well, it's very kind of you to say that. It had a lot to do with a relationship I had with a drummer named Mark Cranny, who's no longer with us. Mark Cranny and I had played in a few ensembles together, especially one which was Tommy Bolin Band. And at one time, after that gig, I got a call from Mark, and he said, "Hey, I just auditioned for this singer named Gino Vanelli." And I said, "Oh, I know who that is." And he said, "Well, they're looking for a bass player, because normally Gino's concept was using synth bass, but on this one record, they wanted to bring in the electric bass." So fortunately for me, Mark Cranny already had auditioned and gotten the gig with Gino to record on this record. And they asked him if he had any preferences for any bass players to come down and audition. And thankfully Mark called me, and he and I ended up at a...
I can't hear Jimmy at all.
Oh, but you can, right?
I can hear Jimmy.
Yeah.
We're still getting him. Pat, can you hear us?
Yeah, we're not hearing Pat. Pat's frozen at this.
Okay, what I'll do, Jimmy, is I'm going to send him a text. Maybe he can sign out and sign back in
Yeah,
to
maybe
us.
he could refresh his deal. Oh, I see. He just did he just jump out? I see. We got some other people here.
Yeah, we do. Let me hear. Pat, try to unmute yourself, Pat.
Okay, now
There
we're
you
back.
go.
Yeah.
Did you refresh?
Somebody did. I don't know what happened. It all cut off and came back on. That was awesome.
Okay.
That
Well,
was
here,
very.
I'll just try to finish up with thanks to Mark Craney, I got the audition with Gino Vanelli and his brothers Ross and Joe, and the audition went well, and I got the gig. And they, unfortunately, I didn't play on the whole record because I had already signed a contract to go on the road with two different bands. One was Roy Ayers and Ubiquity, and the other one was the Dave Mason and Friends, which had a variety of people in that band, from Joe Cocker to Graham Nash and all these cool people. So I only played on 3 songs on the Brother to Brother record, and I did play on the I did the solo on the title track, Brother to Brother, which was out of the blue kind of thing. I'd redone 2 tracks that day, which was a song called Feel Like Flying and another song called People I Belong To. And I was getting ready to pack up and leave for the day, and they said, "Hey, can you do us a favor? We were thinking of having a bass solo on this tune." I said, "A bass solo? You want a bass solo on your record?" And he said, "Yeah." So they played me Brother to Brother, and they showed me where they wanted the bass solo, which were trades with Mark Craney. And I said, look, I'll take a pass at it and, see what you think. And they said, great. So they rolled the tape back then. We were on Studers and 24 track 2-inch tape. And I took that solo. That was one pass. And I thought it was terrible. And I said, can I do another one? And they said, no, we like this one. And I said, please let me just take one more pass. So they let me take another pass, but they kept the first solo. And that was it.
Wow.
Home, and the rest is history.
Wow.
And
That's
I ended
incredible.
up doing another 4 records with Gino after that, which you mentioned one, Black Cars.
Right.
Then I did worked on the follow-up to that, which was called Big Dreamers Never Sleep. That had a really cool tune on there. I can't remember. I think it was called Hurts to Be in Love, but I could be wrong about that. And then I worked on 2 other records after that. One was called Inconsolable Man, and then a record where I actually produced a song on it, a record called Slow Love.
Okay.
I had a whole deal with Gino, and Gino and I became really good friends. I really became really good friends as well with Joe Vanelli, who Joe and I co-produced my 2 of my solo records, which was Red Heat and
Yes.
the record after that, which is called Nightfall, that not a lot of people know about, but I just re-released it on Blue Canoe Records.
Awesome. Yeah, I love the Red Heat, the Heat album. Actually perform a few of those songs in my duo, which
Well, thank you. Thanks for doing
love those. And believe it or not, they're the best. We get the most applause for those tunes at the gigs.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir, man. Hey, how important is attitude and ego, if we could talk about that with young players? You know, you're always meeting new
Ego's not
contexts.
important.
Yeah. I mean, to have a good one, let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
With, you know, how do you maintain it in this competitive, you know, somewhat stressful at times business with ups and downs? You meet producers and, you know, there's someone always maybe telling you what to do, you know. How do you let that go, let that ego part go? As soon as someone says, no, Jimmy, don't play a C there, play a B flat there. How did you, I'm sure you've had with working with producers as a producer yourself, but how can these younger players come to leave that ego at the door, so to speak?
Well, that's what you got to do. And just understand that the music is the most important thing. And if you're working for an artist or a band, the most important thing is to find the common ground, you know, the middle ground. Don't put yourself in a position where your ego creates tension. You know, especially in a recording studio, that's a very intimate place to be playing music because you're so exposed. You know, you lay down a track and you go into the control room and there you are, you know,
exactly.
in color, for better or for worse. So you can't think about yourself. You have to be selfless in that sense. And you just have to dedicate yourself to the music and focus on making the music the best that it can be, no matter what it is. Even if it's something that you don't agree with, you have to just make it your own, and you can't start putting out bad vibes, because that's going to ruin the session, and it's going to if you end up doing enough of that, it's going to end up being a situation where you're going to get a horrible reputation as someone that's not easy to work with, that's not fun to work with. A recording session has to be fun, you know. Music is fun. And I think sometimes people forget that. You know, it becomes more of an ego-based kind of thing, or I'm the best, or none of that.
Yeah.
None of that really matters. And it certainly has not mattered to me. I just wanted to play music and enjoy every possible minute while I was performing, recording, playing live, writing. You know, you have to find joy, you know, in what you do. And fortunately for me, it's not been a difficult thing for me to wrap my head around. I've always been interested in music, and I find joy in performing and writing and working with others, playing music. It's a joyful experience, and you should never forget that. And you know, sometimes, and I've been in this situation where other people don't have that similar concept. So, of course, they might lay some heavy negativity on you. You know, it's coming from them to you. And then at that point, you go, well, that's on them. I didn't create that.
And you pick up on that like immediately when you're sensitive to it.
Now, it has hurt my feelings, I'll be honest, at times, sometimes very deeply. But at the same time, I reminded myself that it wasn't me that created that. And I was trying to do my best. And that person didn't seem to agree with how I felt about it. And I have to live with that, you know. but
And you have to let it go. Yeah.
you let it go. Yeah.
Right.
And maybe go home and practice some more. Maybe they were right about something, you know.
Oh, wow.
But
Yeah.
certainly that would never be coming from me, go to someone else. I only want to create a good feeling, a positive feeling. I want positivity and joy and all the experiences I have with other musicians and playing music.
That's great.
That's just how I am.
And that's a great way to be. And it shows when you're so, it makes you so approachable and in demand, because we don't want to be around that guy that has that, like, that negative vibe, that competitive thing that
There's enough negativity in the world.
right.
So my concept is I want to try to bring as much positivity into the world to go against whatever negative issues there are. So, you know, the world's in a pretty tough place right now. So we need as much positivity as we can muster. And so I wake up every day thinking good thoughts, positive thoughts, and, you know, just want to accomplish good things all day long till I go to sleep at night.
Wow. That's I don't want to say it's hard to do, but something if something
Sometimes
comes up,
you know, things happen during the course of a day that might get you turned around a little bit, but I still, if that happens, I find a way to, you know, just
that's great, man.
make it into a positive.
And I find that's when you mention that, and I find that the most successful and the best musicians that I know, that truly are known out there, they have that same attitude. They have that same approach. You can't, even if you started talking to one guy, a particular friend of mine, if I started saying something, well, you know, this is da da da, and he'd go, yeah, but on the other hand, you know, right to the positive, you know, and that's a great way to be, I think, you know, definitely.
Yeah, it's important. And it's only going to help you tenfold as, you know, as having a good reputation and moving things forward, you know, being a team player.
So there you go. Yeah, I agree. Hey, talking about playing again, on your acts, did you ever need to work on your time or your feel much? Not so much feel, but because I don't think, in my opinion, feel is you either have it or you can't. I don't know. I don't want to say that. You have feel or you kind of don't naturally, I want to say maybe. But as far as your time, when you started, did you just always have good time? Did you work with metronomes, or did you just play with, like myself? I happened to play with music with a lot of feel, like Jeff Porcaro records, you know. And
that's a great influence.
If I'm grooving with that, yeah, if you're grooving with him and you're not out of time, then man, you're locked. But did you have to work on your time much?
No, not necessarily. I mean, certain things I remember needing to work on, and I always felt like my time was good. But you know, it doesn't hurt to practice. I sometimes would practice with a metronome, or I would practice with records that, you know, had, you know, you had to follow the time, and sometimes records speed up and slow down. But
that's true too.
But as long as, you know, and that I learned that as well, because you know, sometimes I notice people, you know, like let's say a bass player would just play to his time, but he wouldn't move with anybody else, and that's kind of counterproductive in a way. So if things are moving, I think the best thing to do is to move with it. As they say, go with the flow.
Yeah.
That doesn't have anything to do with whether you have bad time or good time, as far as yourself to say. But if someone else is having a little bit of a problem, the best thing to do to create success with the music is to just go with whatever's happening. If it's slowing down, speeding up. And if the worst thing is things start slowing down, and I found a way to just kind of push it a little, harder, stay on the edge, so that even though it's slowing down, there's still something that's motivating factors. So those things happen, but fortunately for me, I have to say I'm lucky in many respects that I got to play with guys like Jeff Beccaro and
Wow.
Vinny Colaiuta, Gary Novak. I can name probably a few hundred drummers. Keith Carlisle.
And those are all the greatest drummers in my opinion. Was that a lot of session work, or was that
all kinds of things, live performance and session?
Wow.
Yeah. And you play enough with all those guys, and your time is good.
Exactly. I would say
it's not a problem with time. So I've been lucky. I've been lucky with that.
Yeah, and what about preparing for like you've mentioned before with your frequent flyer mile over your vast career of travel to countries and countries. What about preparing for that for young players that are getting ready to tour, and maybe talk about how you just is it become a mindset, like you just do it, you program to learn to do that? It's got to be hard.
Once you have a schedule, then you have to commit to it, and sometimes it's not the easiest thing to accomplish, especially if you have say 21 gigs in 23 days, something like that, and it's you're traveling almost every day. That's pretty hair-raising. I've done quite a few of those. But main thing is try to get as much rest as possible. That includes napping and whenever you can.
Whenever you can.
If you're really tired, because what you're trying to do is make sure you have enough energy so when you get to the gig, you can really perform and play the music and be, on top of the deal. So rest is always number one priority. Diet, but not everyone will agree with me. But I've been a vegetarian since 1971. So
wow.
And vegetarianism isn't for everybody, but it's been a good thing for me. It keeps my energy level pretty high end, and so between that and rest, and also trying to stay calm, I do meditate. So any metaphysical kind of thing that I would suggest, if it's something that's comfortable for you, certainly give that some thought, because keeping a low stress kind of environment around you is important. So no stress, sleep, good diet, those three things. Exercise. I was wherever I could. All the hotels usually have gyms, so you can go in there. Even sometimes I would finish a gig and get back to the hotel at 1:30 in the morning, and I'd go in the gym for an hour and just work out, and then take a nice hot shower and crawl under the covers, and you're ready to get up at say 6:30 for a lobby call to get on a plane to fly to the next gig, and you feel like I feel pretty good, you know. So any of these things, and you don't have to do them like nonstop, but if it's all in your program, that's going to help. I have other things. Someone once said I should write a book about traveling because I've traveled so much, and I have all these other little concepts about what I bring on a trip, how I pack, you know, and for the last probably over 20 years, I've only traveled with carry-on. So it's
Really
another thing that lowers the stress, because say you're on a plane.
mainly your bass. Your bass is your carry-on too.
Yeah, I carry one bass and
Right.
one bag, and that's
Okay.
it. And it's a bag that fits quite a lot of stuff that I use during the whole tour. I can live on the road for a month with one duffel bag of stuff and
Wow.
my bass. So someone told me I should write a book about that, but basically that lowers stress too, because if you check into a flight and you check in a bunch of baggage, and then that flight gets canceled or something, or you gotta run to catch a whole nother plane. You're lost. Now you're losing your bag. You know.
Oh man, layovers and all
You
that.
get to the next city, and all you have is a pair of shorts, a T-shirt, and your bass. So, and you gotta hope you get your bag either that day or the next day or whatever, you know. And sometimes that doesn't happen either, you know. So
You just learn to deal with it. You dealt with it.
So there's all kinds of things like that.
Without losing your peace, yeah.
But basically, like I mentioned before, rest, you know, good sleep if possible, good diet, exercise, and some kind of way to relax, whether it be meditation or yoga or whatever.
Okay,
Usually those things will get you there.
that's great. That's awesome.
Mm.
Hey, I think you mentioned that you studied with Jocko for a short while, correct? Or were you in New York, or you guys hooked up, or?
I was in Los Angeles, and I was being managed by a company called Cavallo, Ruffalo, and Farnolli, and they were here in on the west side here. They had an office. They managed Earth, Wind, and Fire, a group called Little Feat, great group.
Yeah, right.
Prince.
Wow.
And Weather Report.
Oh, wow.
So I ended up in a rehearsal studio with the band I was in. They managed this little band I was in called Adventure. It was a trio. It was kind of like the Cream meets a little bit of Hendrix and with a New Orleans kind of groove, like a line kind of thing. With vocals and all that. So anyway, we were in a rehearsal and in this private facility, and Weather Report was rehearsing next door. So Jocko had just joined the band. They were getting ready to go on tour to promote a record called Black Market.
Wow.
It was 1970s, 1977. So
great album.
I met John. I went in to listen to him because I was a big fan of Weather Report, and there was this guy playing bass, and I didn't know who it was, and he was playing some pretty unbelievable things. So I made a point of waiting till they came out of their rehearsal to meet him, and I asked him if he gave lessons, and he said, yeah. And so I ended up studying with him for about a week. So I was rehearsing there for a week, and Weather Report was there for about a week. And so I studied with him almost every day for an entire week. But then shortly after that, I got a gig with Flora Purim and Airto.
Wow.
And we ended up opening for Weather Report. So I got to see Jocko on the road, and I took lessons from him on the road in various cities in the United States.
And that was Airto was playing drums at the time or percussion?
Yes. He was
Drums.
playing both.
Both?
Ricky Lawson was playing drums.
Wow.
And percussion. He played some percussion too. So they would go back and forth. So on the Brazilian stuff, Airto would play drums, Ricky would play percussion, and on the funk stuff, Ricky would play drums and Airto would play percussion.
Okay. Who else was in that band?
Raul D'Souza on trombone, who was
Okay.
incredible, from Rio de Janeiro. A piano player from Uruguay named Hugo Fatoruso. A percussionist and a vocalist named Ruben Morada. Flora Purim.
Right.
And a guitar player named Jeff Richmond.
Okay. Jeez.
And that was the first band. And then there was a little break in between the touring, and the band completely changed. So I played bass with Chester Thompson on drums.
Wow.
And Milcho Leviev on piano, who's this Eastern European piano player. Raul D'Souza again, and Flora Airto.
Okay. I know that piano player sounds familiar. I think he was with...
He played with Billy Cobham.
I was going to say Billy Cobham, yeah. Mm-hmm. Did you ever do anything with Billy?
Yeah. Yeah, wow. I played with him and some German musicians. This was a wild thing. It was just something that was thrown together. And they needed a bass player, a guest bass player, and a guest saxophonist. So Billy was doing this thing in Germany with these German musicians, but they wanted some guests. So they got me and Eric Marienthal to fly in and play with Billy and these other German musicians. And we did a concert in Cologne together.
Was that recorded, or was that?
I don't think so. It might have been recorded, but I don't know anything about it. I just went there and learned. We had a quick rehearsal, like a 3-hour rehearsal, and then boom, played some tunes, and I hung with Billy. I actually tried to help him with some stuff, and that was it. That was it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so it was just a one-shot deal, but I did get to play with Billy, and that was fun.
Yeah. I met him once. We opened for him up in Cleveland a couple of times, and then I actually met him down here in Tampa years later. So, well, if no one has any questions, I think Jimmy, if
Pat.
you don't have any, yes.
Hey Pat.
Yes.
Hey, Jimmy.
Philip.
Pat's my buddy in a band. I'm a bass player. We play together quite a lot. And Jimmy, I was really glad to see you when you toured with Jeff at Jeff Lorber at the Jacksonville Jazz Festival.
Oh, great. Yeah.
3-4. In fact, I walked up and I'm like, holy cow, Jimmy's touring with him. I just didn't know. I saw Lorber on the list, but didn't know. So anyway, that was fantastic. And I wear another hat as a jazz journalist. So I reviewed the Arc Trio for Jazz Times, and
thank you.
You know, and that's one of my questions I have. Do you were talking about world music and Weather Report a little bit, and certainly that had such a nice combination of world music and fusion happening. Are you guys doing more of that?
We are. In fact, I'm actually producing an Arc Trio big band record right now, nice. Which is like a fusion big band, and it has all kinds of elements. Gergo Borlai is playing drums, so it's the trio.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of guest musicians that I brought in, Seamus Blake, a fine tenor player from New York. Steve Kahn's on guitar and some stuff.
Oh, wow.
Osnoy, Mike Miller, and Nguyen Lee. I don't know if you know who Nguyen is. He's Vietnamese, but he lives in Paris. He's a really interesting guitar player. I got to play with him in VDR, WDR orchestra in Cologne a few times. And just an amazing guitarist, very different. So those four guys, Steve Taglioni's on some stuff, and Katis Buckingham is a virtuosic flautist. He's on some stuff, and it's the John DeVersa Big Band.
Very nice.
So John's in Miami, actually. He's not far from you.
Right.
So John wrote all the horn charts, and Scott Kinsey did all the rhythm charts. But it's a art trio project with the John DeVersa Big Band and playing the music of MSM Schmidt, who's a fusion composer from Bremen, Germany.
Wow.
It's kind of an interesting collaborative project, and I've been producing that record now for a year and a half because of COVID and all the virtual sessions that I had to organize.
Let me ask you quickly. Fascinating to me. I never got to see Jocko, didn't see Weather Report until Victor Bailey was in it. But what does a week of lessons with Jocko look like? What does Jocko teach? I'm just curious, when Jocko left, was there any opportunity to become part of Weather Connections? It would have been a different kind of a thing, but I know Victor was great for it, but I mean, after the Jocko era, was there any opportunity did that ever come about? Or were you interested?
You mean as for me joining the Weather Report?
Yeah.
Well, I would always be interested in that, but I actually I knew Joe Zawinul well, and I had met Wayne, and I played with a bunch of the drummers like Chester Thompson and Peter Erskine.
Because I was thinking it might have been a natural. You would have brought something different than Victor,
Well, yeah, but at the time I also, I was heavily involved with the Yellow Jackets.
Yeah.
So that was taking precedent for me. I was deeply involved. I mean, I was in that band for 32 years. So.
I was shocked when you left, actually. I'm like, that can't how can there be Yellow Jackets without Jimmy Haslip?
Well, that's very kind of you to say, but, it came to a point where I was doing a lot of production work, and that, to me, seemed like a place for me to go. That's where I started feeling more comfortable with what I was doing career-wise, and it also was allowing me to have more opportunity to work with a larger variety of people, and also for me to kind of slow down the traveling thing, because I think by that time, by 2012, which is when I actually. That was the cutoff date when I left. 2012, my wife's here. 2012, I actually produced 10 records that year. So, and I had already been doing, I think I had about 90 some odd records that I'd already produced along the way, starting around 1981. I had, by 2012, produced over 90 records. And now it's gotten even more intense because I've had more time to focus because of less travel. I think I traveled around the world probably 8 times at this point.
Wow.
Someone recently asked me, how many times have you been to Japan? And I thought about it, and I said, I think around 60.
Wow.
And then I kind of freaked myself out. I said, how could I travel to Japan 60 times? But I did look into that a little bit, and I believe that's pretty close. You know.
Jeez.
Hey, what did you get? Just back on the Jocko question, just again.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. That's all right. Just very curious about that.
Well, studying with Jocko was interesting because it wasn't just like sitting there and, going through modes or something. It was just kind of getting together with him and playing, and then he would play something and he would show me some things and go, check this out, and he showed me this really funny pattern that I actually just used on a solo that's all in fourths, but it's using alternate strings. So you have to really stretch your hand out to accommodate that. And with that actually became an exercise, just to strengthen, especially the pinky, which I think when I started studying with Jocko, my pinky wasn't that strong, but it is today, thanks to him. He also would play me stuff and say, you gotta listen to this stuff. And he gave me advice about things, and we would just talk about music. It was, we were born literally 30 days apart.
Oh, wow.
He was born on December 1st, 1951. I was born on December 31st, 1951. So with that, being only 30 days apart, we really kind of related to one another as dudes, as guys. So it went beyond just the teacher-student kind of relationship. We actually, we actually connected as people, as two guys. And he was certainly very confident of himself, and I didn't question that because he was light years ahead of where I was as a musician. And that in itself was just being around that was kind of like a rocket ship of inspiration. Just to see that this guy was so far ahead of me, but we were only 30 days apart. So there had to be some rhyme to that reason. And for me, it seemed to be, I just need to work harder. And I don't think I ever would accomplish what he did, just because a lot of what I feel that he did doesn't have anything to do with practice. It's a gift. He had a gift.
Yeah.
And that became more and more evident as I hung out with him, And I could only think of a few people that would be in that realm. And one of those other people would be Jimi Hendrix.
Right.
I kind of felt that I saw Hendrix 5 times. So when I was with Jocko, I had a similar kind of feeling about who I was with, And I actually was got pretty close to Jimi Hendrix. I once got on a stage where he was playing, and I was literally, I'd say about 8 feet from him for almost an entire concert. And the vibe I got from him was undescribable. It's very magical. That's all I can say.
And you still have your hearing.
I don't anymore. Hearing is gone, but look, you get inspiration and motivation from a lot of different sources. And certainly I did get a lot of all that from both Jocko and Jimi Hendrix, and a lot of the music that I grew up with. And every day I'm learning more about other music, and I've now gotten to play with a lot of different people and so many different kinds of situations that, there's no way around the fact that I'm getting all this energy from all this music. So that's I build my day on all that, and I hope to that inspires other people to do the same. It's there's nothing special really about me here. I just open my mind up, and I just try to consume all the music and all the positivity that I can, and try to take it all in and then send it out in my own way to whoever's out there listening. And
Right.
that's all I can do. And but it is a positive. It's all based on being positive and sending out positivity at all times.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's a great approach.
Yeah, that's all I know, really. And then mostly being self-taught. Of course, I always felt that I was challenged doing what I do, because I don't play the instrument in a normal fashion. So I have to get up every morning and feel like, okay, I can do this, and I'm going to work hard and make it happen. So, but I've been put into some pretty interesting situations that have pushed me. And that's another thing for young students to understand, that it's good to play with people that are, let's say, at a higher level, because then
Yes,
you have something to shoot for,
I agree.
So don't feel shy about that. And that got me going. I mean, one of the first professional bands I got into in 1970, when I graduated from high school, I joined the band. I auditioned and I got the gig, unbelievably, but I was 18 and all the guys in the band were like 25, 27, 28, and I thought they were old. But they were experienced. They had been doing club dates and all that. I was just out of high school,
Yeah.
So I was green as corn, but man, playing with those guys, I was like, wow, this is incredible, So it really motivated me to practice and learn all the tunes that we were performing, and really, really try to do the best job I could. And fortunately, the guitar player in that band kind of took me under his wing. He was about 25, I think, and I was 18 or 24 maybe. But he was studying with Pat Martino. So he would sit me down and he'd say, okay, you got to learn this melody on the bass.
Wow.
And he taught me, like, for example, the melody of Freedom Jazz Dance, which is kind of a funny little melody built on fourths. It's an Eddie Harris tune.
Okay.
So I just remember learning that and thinking, wow, what a cool thing, as
To
an
learn that line.
Yeah, to learn that line and I could play it with the guitar player. We'd play it in unison,
Wow.
and it just was a great feeling. So I think that's the bottom line. Everything's got to be filled with joy, and that in itself motivates you to try to
Be your best.
better and
Be
move
your
forward.
best. Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. And do you have your own a line of basses, like someone that built you your own because of your you know?
Technically, I do, but I never really wanted to do that. Mike Tobias, who I endorsed Tobias basses for a long time. Philip, you know who that is, right? Yep. At one point, he was looking to do something with me, and I wanted him to build a bass, a bolt-on, because he was building these what's called neck through. So there's no bolts. It's just one piece from the bridge all the way to the top of the headstock. Right? It's one piece of wood. And I kept telling Mike, I think bolt-ons are, punchier. They got a little more punch. I think you should build a bolt-on. And it took me a while to convince him to do that, but he finally did. He finally said, "Okay, I'll build I'll build a bolt-on." And then it got quite popular. And I think he wanted. At one point, he talked to me about an kind of a royalty or something, and I just said, "No, man, just sell the basses." And if he'd already been very generous with me as an endorser.
Gotcha.
But he ended up calling the bass the Killer Bee.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because of the yellow jacket, the bee. So
Gotcha.
There was some kind of correlation with the fact that I twisted his arm to build a bolt-on bass. And then the bass that Keith Roscoe built me, because I've been endorsing Roscoe guitarists since 1998, he built me a beautiful 6-string bass, and I asked for a few bells and whistles that I was interested in. And that bass has now become my signature model, but it's not on paper. It's just people just know that particular setup is my setup. So,
okay.
Other than that, I've not gone into any kind of signature model really.
For any one company, yeah.
No. But I do endorse still MTD and Roscoe basses. And then I have this endorsement with a Japanese company called Innerwood. And they build these like souped up Fender basses. And they're beautiful. They record well. They're really put together nicely. And it's one of the workhorses I have here that I do sessions with. So
nice. And your fretless bass is...
I have a few of those. I have some old Tobiases. They're really great. I have 2 of those. I have an MTD that's a beautiful fretless, and I have a beautiful Roscoe fretless. So I have 4 fretlesses. And actually, there's a fretless that I still have, but I haven't really done anything with it in a long time. But it was the very first fretless that I got. And I didn't start playing that till 1988. No, I take that back. I played that before that. But it's on a song by Gino Vanelli called Wild Horses.
Wild Horses.
And that was my first fretless. And it was a Yamaha.
Fretless.
It was a Yamaha bass that I convinced a technician at Yamaha to make a fretted bass into a fretless bass for me, and he did, and I used that bass on that song, and it's got a pretty distinctive sound actually. So, and that's just a 4-stringer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
When I wrote Pasquale Finale for my CD, I had written a tune. And it was a Latin songo bass line, I guess you'd call it. and I couldn't figure out who I wanted to play bass on it. And I thought, you know, I'm just gonna ask. Let me see. I can hear fretless. I can hear fretless on this, and man, this is going to be a great song. Who can I get to play bass? Who can I get to play bass on it? I'm just gonna text. I'm just gonna go on Messenger, and I didn't know Jimmy personally, and I sent him a text message, and Jimmy responded in 5 minutes. You know, it said, "Hey Pat, I'm going to be in Chicago. I got to do a sound check and dinner, and then I'll be available. Call me on my cell phone tonight." I called him, and he said, "I'd love to play on the song." And what that did for me, I just want to thank you here. And because, man, you know what happened with that song was after I found out you were going to play on it, I changed the I asked you to play the scat. I scatted with you because I knew that I had been listening to stuff that you wrote with the scat vocal with you playing the line. So I actually rearranged the tune, and because I heard you on it, and then I think you said to me, "Well, you know, Pat, it's not really a complete song," because I said, "Well, could you give me some advice on the tune?" And this was just great because you really helped me so much in writing the song, actually, because you said it needs another section. It just goes from A to B, and it goes to A, and it goes, you know, yeah, the melody's cool, and I'm digging the tune, but man, it's not really complete. And I said, wow. So I went in the studio, and I just made up this other section, and then you and I traded a little section on it. But it was so, I just want to, man, in closing, I really want to, man, it's just been amazing you've been such an inspiration to me, and for sharing your time, your knowledge, your inspiration, your positive energy, your vibe with us today, the Clearwater Jazz Holiday with these young students. You know, thank you.
I appreciate that. And one quick thing that you brought up that students should know, communication, very important. If somebody writes to you, answer them back as soon as you can. Don't wait like a week or anything, because that's another
opportunity will be gone. Right.
Yeah, just stay on things, call people back, whether you can work with them or not. Just let them know where you stand, and communication is very important.
Thank you, man. So much knowledge and advice. It's incredible. It's an honor to speak with you.
My pleasure. Today. And Philip,
I don't know if Steve.
Yeah,
Steve's still with us. There's Steve.
I definitely am. No, what a great session. We made it, Jimmy. Jimmy, thank you for being part of the Young Lions Jazz Master virtual sessions. Your first virtual session with us, it was fantastic. Pat, you did a great job, Pat, and we love you, man. And
I'd like to revisit. I'd like to revisit with Jimmy if we could, Steve. We've talked about it, and maybe play together somehow.
It'd be very cool. Well, we'll have to do some arm twisting maybe with Jimmy, but we'd love to have him back. And Philip, I appreciate you being part of this session today.
Thank you.
It was really cool and a surprise to see you. And Acme Jazz Garage was fantastic this past Friday at a sold out show as part of our Wanderlust music series, both Philip and Pat, and we really appreciated that. It was a beautiful evening of beautiful music. And
Thank
for
you.
For the students that will be watching this session, we talked quite a bit today about Jacko, and we have a really neat program that was born out of the pandemic to complement our history of jazz outreach program that happens in the school system down here and with other special groups. And it's called the Stop Time series with Frank Williams, where we do a really neat history of jazz, audio and video archive. It's pretty comprehensive, and it starts with early Civil War era influences and talks about people and places through contemporary musicians. And there's a great piece that we just shared on our Facebook page, ironically or coincidentally, I should say, yesterday about Jacko, and it's a great about 16-minute piece on who he was, and so I would encourage students to watch that. And recently, another one of our family of musicians, Brandon Robertson, great bass player. He's the director of jazz down at Gulf Coast University, Florida Gulf Coast University in Fort Myers. Just did a really nice piece on Jacko as part of our What I Love About series, which is an even deeper dive. So these are just a couple of other resources that students should watch. That second piece will be up in the studio in about a week's time, as will this video. So on behalf of the Clearwater Jazz Holiday Foundation and all of our supporters, fans, we want to thank all the musicians for participating today. And for everybody who's been watching, following along, thank you for helping to make this special. Stay safe out there. Keep being creative. Keep playing. Keep practicing. Keep sharing. And we'll see everybody back at the next one.
Awesome.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you, Steve.
See you
Thank
guys.
you, Jimmy.
My best.